This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, Sean, our weekend show is very different to our weekday shows because today, here we are, each of us nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, so one that's maybe flying under the radar just a little bit, and our favourite story as well. It is a very competitive environment. It is essentially the Olympics of podcasting.
Yeah, I think so.
And we're joined by our Olympic adjudicator, Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Michael.
All right, we won't delay too much this morning because I want to get into it. There's the thing that's kind of stuck out for me this week was just how many stories there were. This was a massive, massive week for news. My only hope as we go into the biggest story of the week is that one person just doesn't kind of combine all of those stories into one and try and create it as the biggest story of the week. Sean, what was your biggest story?
Oh, Michael, you are incredibly transparent. There's no doubt about it. Earnings season was the big story. Can't get enough of it.
Oh, this is combining all 20 stories we've covered this week into one. Okay, please go on.
It has been an incredible week, really, in terms of earnings and finding out what's going on in the real economy. We had the Commonwealth Bank record result. Then its share price tumbled. That one was all about net interest margins. That's the difference between what a bank pays on deposits and receives on loans. They're much better, but they might have peaked. Hence, the banks were sold off. Telstra had another good result. Basically, mobile is carrying the giant telco. Customers seem to be sticking around Telstra more than they ever have before, Michael, sticking around.
Okay, no, so context is important here, Sean. The reference being to sticky in our Friday episode and just me questioning whether it should be used as a legitimate economics term because it just sounds a little bit, as I said, icky.
Icky. Mickey thinks sticky is icky.
Yep. And we vetoed it. And you overruled my veto. You vetoed my veto, so please go on.
That was Telstra. Newcrest. Well, that was an interesting one. That's the big gold miner. Newmont has made a $24.4 billion bid for Newcrest. It knocked it back. The board said it wasn't enough. Then Newcrest came out and paid a special dividend. In fact, dividend payouts were about 3 times what they're expected to be. Normally, Newcrest doesn't pay much in terms of dividends. Did this time. Wonder whether that's got anything to do with the takeover. Anyway, the upshot of that is that Newmont, the bidder, is going to get a look at Newcrest's books. So I reckon there'll be more on that one. Wesfarmers came out, more about its heavy business, did pretty well. Although Rob Scott, who's the boss of Wesfarmers, said that consumers are starting to feel the pinch from the rate hikes. That's good for Kmart, Target and Bunnings. Of course, all Wesfarmers companies. CSL's just chugging along. It did the big Viva Pharmaceutical merger last year. Seems to be doing pretty well. Plenty more earnings. Basically, a few things out of this week. The economy has come off the boil a bit this year. I think we found that out. Supply chain pressures have eased. That's good news. And most importantly, there's plenty of uncertainty about the outlook and where the economy is heading. Easily the biggest story of the week, Michael.
Well, it's easy to be the biggest story of the week, Sean, when you have covered literally every story in one. But you have left me some scraps, and I appreciate the scraps that you have left me. And I'm going to fashion them crudely into a big story of my own because they don't call me Michael the Underdog Thompson.
Adam, have you ever called Michael Thompson the underdog?
No, and I don't recall it ever being said of him.
Certainly not by him because he's never thought of himself as the underdog.
No, and as we know, you cannot appoint nicknames to yourself.
Well, I seem to recall you this week, Adam, referring to me as a dreamboat.
Now, again, Michael, context is important. The truth is that Michael described himself as a dreamboat. I said, Michael, did you just describe yourself as a dreamboat? He took that as me describing him.
As long as it comes out of somebody else's mouth, then it has been said about you. So yes, and you both also just called me the underdog a moment ago. So I will embrace my title. My nomination for the biggest story this week is all about politics because it's actually quite a lot that's happened both here and overseas in the last week. The highlight for me, probably, well, really for a business podcast at least, was Senate estimates, where obviously the bureaucrats were grilled by senators. The headline act was Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe, under a lot of pressure, obviously, over the bank's actions in raising rates when he said that they wouldn't go up until 2024 at the earliest. But he did say this week that the pain from rising rates is less than the pain of unchecked soaring inflation. He said he'll serve out his term. Whether he gets another one is a matter for the Treasurer, but would you even want to kind of stick around after this would have to be one of the toughest times to be the governor of the Reserve Bank, as if you wouldn't want to just go, you know what, I'm done. Also in politics, plenty of other stuff happening. 15th anniversary of the apology to the stolen generation, the abolition of temporary protection visas for asylum seekers, warnings there that boats might start arriving again, a committee looking at the impact of bank branch closures in regional areas. Also on global politics, as well as plenty happening in the United States. We had inflation figures this week. Also, though, after a really tense period between the US and China over the shooting down of a Chinese spy balloon, this week things have cooled a little bit and both sides seem keen to lower the pressure. The US has confirmed that 3 more objects that were shot down were not, in fact, linked to China. They're not actually quite sure what they were, commercial or something else, which, I don't know, for me, it kind of begs the question of whether the US just used a $400,000 Sidewinder missile to shoot down some kid's drone that they got for Christmas, because they were talking about the fact that they don't necessarily know what it was. And there's all that kind of concern or the speculation that, oh, it's aliens, etc. But really, it's just like a weather balloon or something. But the first one of these ones that they shot down, they actually missed with the first missile, which sunk into a lake, and then they hit it with the next one. So that was $800,000 worth of missiles to bring down what I do suspect was a drone. There we go. That's my biggest story of the week. Could you tell that the fight had gone out of me a little bit for this one? Because I knew that I was going to go.
Well, we haven't got a result yet. Please.
No, Michael's put up the white flag.
How about respecting our wonderful judge, Adam Lang, and let him tell you that you lost?
I'll take that temporary respect. Thank you very much. Sean wins.
Oh.
So the reason being, and it's...
We know the reason. You combined all the stories into one. We established this earlier. Please.
Which you both did. So it's all of those individual stories of corporates coming together, but the themes and the theme across all of them, it's been good. We've had record good results in so many ways, relatively low inflation, relatively low interest rates, really low unemployment until now. And there's no doubt there are challenges ahead to that. We won't be in those record territories for much longer. I don't think it will come off a bit. And really, that was the sum of the business stories. Being good, challenges ahead. Michael, your stories, there were lots of great elements amongst them, but in total, no, Sean wins this one.
Yeah, what you meant to say was my stories reek of desperation of trying to pull together some kind of entry that might take on Sean. But no, I do agree that Sean's was by far the biggest story of the week. So we're united on that one. So we'll split the point. Most remarkable story this week. I'll go first, Sean, if that's all right for this one.
Yep, sure.
And this is actually a story that we covered right at the very beginning of the week. And I am still, in fact, gobsmacked by it. The 5 biggest Western oil companies making a combined profit last year of almost $200 billion US. That's profit. That is extraordinary. Great for shareholders, obviously. The biggest was ExxonMobil with a record $56 billion. Chevron, Shell, and then Total Energies came next. And bringing up the rear, really the relative minnow, I suppose, in this group was BP with just $28 billion in profit. They also managed to get plenty of people offside, I think, with changes to their plans to cut oil and gas output and carbon emissions. But really, it is no surprise that the oil giants are raking it in at the moment with energy costs soaring last year. Still, these 5 companies combined made a touch, and I'm using some of your own calculations here, Sean, so if the figures are wrong, it's not my fault. They made a touch under $28 million US an hour last year, which I think is both remarkable and just a little bit uncomfortable as well. Just to think that those companies are making so much money every hour of every day of every week.
I just have one question, having listened to that. What is it to be gobsmacked?
It's a good word, isn't it?
Gobsmacked. So gob sort of is your mouth, smacked in the mouth?
Yeah, I think you've kind of answered your own question there, isn't it? You, to have been smacked in the mouth like that. Just
So I'm still smacked in the mouth by it.
yeah, I'm still mouth smacked by it. Maybe can we change the most remarkable category to the mouth smacker of the week?
Maybe. I'm not against it.
All right, Sean, what was your mouth smacker?
I'm sorry. Look, your mouth smacker was great for a bunch of faraway companies that we've known about for months, right? No doubt about it. My mouth smacker story is much, much closer to home and can be encompassed in one name, Andrew Forrest. This week, Forrest accused the West Australian newspaper, owned by Kerry Stokes, of bias, inflammatory and inaccurate reporting. He suggested his fellow West Australian billionaire was misusing the power of his media empire. Don't think media barons ever do that. Anyway, according to the Financial Review, Dr. Forrest is convinced the West Australian is pursuing him and his company after Fortescue ordered, a bunch of zero-emission haul trucks from a competitor rather than WesTrac, which of course is owned by Seven Group, part of that whole conglomerate. The second part of the story that's remarkable is the size of the dividend Forrest got from his company Fortescue Metals this week. $849 million. That was less than last year because the iron ore green energy group hasn't performed so well. $849 million dividend. Remarkable. Also the stoush between the billionaires, the dividend. Absolute mouth smacking. Adam.
Mouth smacking story of the week goes to Michael. Andrew Forrest versus Kerry Stokes. That, two West Australian billionaires having a crack at each other is interesting and remarkable. Has happened before on a national and international scale. $849 million dividend is indeed huge, not as big as it's been before. So there was lots of great elements to it.
Hey, Adam, how about just playing up the goods of Michael's rather than the bads of mine, okay? Let's be a little bit more positive.
I thought I was being positive. Anyway, the 5 biggest Western oil companies making an absolute mozza during this time when we're supposed to be transitioning more and more to green energy, I think is symbolic and significant. So Michael wins for the mouth-smacking story of the week.
The part of the story I really love is BP comes up, makes $28 billion in profit, then goes, why just slow down that transition to green energy? We might just, dig up a few more fossil fuels for a while. Is that okay, fellas?
Yeah, we're making good money.
It is. It's an incredible story, and apparently it was good enough to earn the point. There we go, 1-1 heading into halftime. We'll come back in a moment and find the sleeper story of the week. Okay, so we are looking for the sleeper story of the week, Sean. So this is a story that's maybe not getting the attention that you think it deserves, or that it's going to become a bigger story further down the track. What was it for you?
My sleeper story is a snoozer because while we heard plenty about it, it might have massive ramifications for the federal government. Now, the Albanese government this week abolished temporary protection visas. You just glanced at that one, Michael, in passing on your biggest story.
It's already been covered, mate.
It's much more to it. Around 19,000 refugees who have been in Australia for up to 10 years will be able to apply for a newly created permanent residency visa with family reunion rights and a path to citizenship. Now, the Rudd government abolished temporary protection visas in 2008, but they were already introduced by the coalition as one of 3 pillars of the Operation Sovereign Borders. It was a military-led Operation Sovereign Borders. The whole idea was to deter asylum seekers from arriving by boat. Now, the Albanese government supports the other 2 planks, boat turnbacks and offshore processing, but they've abolished these TPVs. Now, the opposition jumped on the decision, saying granting permanent visas could revive the people smuggling trade. Very few issues have divided Australia as much as refugees over the past 20 years. The fights over Howard government policy of turning back the boats were hard fought and passionate. Ultimately, the policy did work. Julia Gillard's government nearly got a new way through a Malaysia solution, didn't quite come to the fore. What it's all about is stopping people smugglers. That's really important. I kind of support what the Albanese government has done, but the opposition also has a point here. This is a really vexed issue and a very serious issue, and could become a very, very big political issue, particularly if at some point in the next year or two, Australia intercepts a boatload of refugees that have been encouraged by the change in policy. So, whilst we did hear a lot about it, the actual ramifications and what this means for the political debate, obviously the outcome for these people, but also for Australian politics is enormous. Michael.
That is a good story. That is a really good story, Sean.
We've already covered it, mate. I think that was your phrase that you used in the midst of it.
Yeah, yes. I did cover it, so I'm not gonna criticize you. That is up to Adam, and I'm just hoping he's listening carefully and taking notes.
Still present.
Thank you, Adam. On what has already been mentioned earlier in the program, my sleeper story, APRA, seems to actually be quite a good source of sleeper stories because the banking regulator isn't exactly known for being the most exciting of independent regulators.
So what is the exciting regulator? Tell me.
Well, okay, if I had to pick one, I would say maybe ACMA, Australian Communications and Media Authority. I would say that's the spiciest of the regulators.
Why is ACMA the spiciest of the regulators?
Well, because it brings celebrity into it.
Ah.
Because you think about it, that these are talking about people like some of the big radio presenters and kind of getting all these, and they always make headlines, and it's usually headlines on, say, the Daily Telegraph or the Herald Sun or the Daily Mail, and so to me that makes for a spicy regulator. Indeed. Anyway, so if we've got ACMA at one end, and then at the other end we've got APRA being a good source of sleeper stories, that is where I have plucked my sleeper story from this week. The banking regulator may allow borrowers to get bigger loans by reducing serviceability buffers that are designed to actually make sure that people can afford their repayments in the first place. Now, Sean, when I first heard you say this week, I thought it sounded like madness, because I thought, why, when rates have climbed so much, would APRA allow banks to loan more to people? But then you explained it, and you explained it so well, and I understood it. When rates are low, the buffers need to allow for a larger potential rise. And once they've risen, there's less potential for them to keep going, so the buffer can, in fact, be smaller. Did I get that right?
Yes, I'm impressed.
Great. And so it makes perfect sense to me now. So, and that could actually signal quite a big change for people looking for a mortgage, and may just help kind of keep the housing market going when it is under so much pressure. I think it's a great sleeper story, because it's from APRA and because it affects so many people. Anyone with home loans, it affects all the big banks, it affects everyone. It affects the world. This is a universal sleeper story. Adam, go for it.
Sean wins. Clear margin on this one.
I hate it when you say that it's a clear margin. That's almost more hurtful than when you go and pick apart Sean's story. Just with one kind of sentence, you just demolish me and go, "This was an easy win, this one, Sean," or "That was a big margin for this one, Sean." I'm like, oh, Adam, to the heart.
Michael, there is if I can offer a little encouragement, it's just so impressive to hear you talk about APRA. Having worked with you for some time.
Yes, true.
Sean, you must be delighted at what Michael is taking on board.
He is becoming a very, very boring man. It's wonderful.
I would say learned.
Learned.
Business savvy.
Nerdish.
Well, even the compliment that good. It is significant, Michael, but I think even more significant is the change to temporary protection visas and its implications for refugees and immigration ongoing. That is something that we have grappled with for a long time, and I think we still will. So I think that is a massive sleeper story.
Thank you, Adam. Let's move on to our favourite story. Michael, go for it.
All right, I will go first, and I'm going with the Super Bowl for my favourite story of the week, because it has something for everyone. For the sports lovers, you've got the actual game, the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Philadelphia Eagles, a couple of Australians playing as well. Then for the business side, we had the advertising and just generally the big business of sport. But on the advertising front, in 1967, the cost of a 30-second commercial was about $40,000 US. 2023, that same spot cost $7 million US. about $230,000 per second, which is just incredible. You've got all the big brands advertising in terms of beer and soft drinks and EVs, plenty of movie ads, even religion getting in on it. It is prime time. Apparently, there's an average of 50 minutes of commercials in the Super Bowl, which is $700 million in ad revenue. So we've covered sport, we've covered business, and then just for you, Adam, the Super Bowl has halftime entertainment, and this year it was Rihanna. What did you think?
I thought it was amazing. Thought it was great.
Yeah, a spectacle, right?
Yes.
Good. No, that's fine.
Adam, can I just jump in here? Do you know who won the game? And remember we had this discussion last year. Last year, Adam couldn't even remember who played in the game, but he knew the halftime entertainment.
That's not true. I did recall it during the episode. It came to mind. I couldn't recall it immediately.
Yeah, you couldn't get Google to work fast enough. Now, definitely shouldn't say that when you're in the middle of judging me. And also, still Super Bowl related, if you happen to spot way up in the nosebleeds, Rupert Murdoch was there.
No.
Sitting alongside Elon Musk.
Was he?
Yes, and Musk then tweeted about the Super Bowl, was apparently disappointed that his tweet had less reach than Joe Biden's tweet. So he made Twitter engineers change the algorithm to prioritize his own, which is a little bit frightening, don't you think? Anyway, you put it all together and the Super Bowl had everything and is easily not just my favorite story, but a universal favorite story of the week. Sean, what's your second place nomination?
Well, my favourite story is very much more serious than yours, I've got to say. The Republicans in the US have got their first opponent for Donald Trump. Now, I reckon Trump was the worst US president in my lifetime. And the idea of him being the leader of the free world again is mouth-smacking. It's a shocker. Now, Nikki Haley has stepped forward. She's put up her hand. She's from South Carolina, 51-year-old, once governor of South Carolina, and was a UN ambassador in the Trump administration. It's very early in the campaign. Others will emerge, but probably not for a while. But she has put her hand up and said, let's take on Donald Trump from within the Republican Party. She wants generational change in the party. She wants the Republicans to rally around substantive issues, and she wants a candidate with appeal to mainstream America. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you want the other side to have a strong candidate because America will be a better society if you have, strong candidates from both the major parties. Finally, we have someone to stand up to Donald Trump. Go Vicky, go Vicky, go Vicky. Adam, over to you.
Very good. Lovely chant at the end.
Yeah, well.
Michael wins this one.
By a clear margin? Well, just once. I would like to hear you say by a clear margin after one of my stories.
I'm going to leave you in suspense as to the margin.
Goodness me. Okay, carry on.
I loved the Super Bowl. I caught about 10 minutes of the halftime entertainment live and saw the rest of Rihanna's performance later. I thought it was great. I do know the Kansas City Chiefs won in a thriller at the end, but I didn't know about Rupert Murdoch sitting next to Elon Musk. I think that's brilliant. So all of the elements coming together here, that is indeed my favourite story of the week too.
Okay, is that 2-2? What was the points? Let's break it down. I know that I'm not holding out much hope because you did say that there were some clear margins here.
2-2 on the score count. Sean, 89 points and Michael, 88 points. That's significant 1 point victory.
Okay, I think I'm sure everybody wants to know how big was the margin on that sleeper story of the week?
Well, it was only 2 points, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what?
Because they're both high quality battles. I mean, all the stories are great. So it's like the serviceability buffer. There's not a lot in it, between you both.
Oh, superb. So the underdog, Michael, the underdog Thompson, continues to be the underdog and goes into next week also as the underdog.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've come to the end. One very quick question. I've been meaning to ask you this all week, Sean, because I actually made the mistake earlier in the week we started talking about Tradle, the Wordle kind of version for trade.
Yeah, no, it's great. It has taken me a little while to work out what the arrows mean and the kilometers and things like that. So once I've worked out that they're actually giving you hints, the very first one I put in was diamond mining and whatnot, and I put in South Africa, and it said no, it was like 15,000 kilometers away. So then I put in Zimbabwe, which is right next door to South Africa. So it turned out to be India was the solution. But yeah, it's very addictive, Michael. You're right.
Yeah, Tradle. And Adam, you're a fan, aren't you?
Oh, I am. I haven't quite spent as much time on it as yet, but I love the technology. And it's done by the OEC, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So how impressive gamifying data.
Well, you just made that less fun.
Yeah. Back to APRA. Let's go.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.